I'd like to summarize the discussion we've been having in terms of the first five Sermon on the Mount discourses, which basically present the sum of all true religion. You'll notice in the collection that we're reading, the Sermons of John Wesley, a collection for the Christian journey, that these sermons have been carefully situated. They begin right after the challenges to the Christian life, with the last one being on Satan's devices. And then they are also prior to two important sermons on the moral law: the law established by faith, Discourse 1, the law established by faith, Discourse 2. And the Sermon on the Mount, Discourse 5, which is about the moral law in great detail, leads nicely into this series of sermons on the moral law. This positioning is also important because as we're making our way through the Ordo Salutis, the order of salvation, we are headed towards the territory of Christian perfection or entire sanctification. And so we are seeing in a snapshot the sum of all true religion. It's sort of enticing us, showing us what lays ahead. And the first three of these discourses does that work rather nicely. It begins with talking about the importance of poverty of spirit, what we might call Christian humility. We note, for example, that in Wesley's important sermon on Christian perfection, that is the circumcision of the heart, he not only talks about the importance of the theological virtues of faith, hope, and love, but also the importance of humility. And we see that emphasis here once again in terms of the sum of true religion. Wesley also underscores meekness here, the importance of hungering and thirsting after righteousness, the importance of being merciful, that we have been shown mercy, we are merciful to others. And then in one of these early discourses, he specifically focuses on the pure in heart, what it is to be pure in heart, because indeed the Beatitudes talk about the reality of blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And so this prepares us nicely for what lies ahead. We have a vision of what sanctity at its highest reaches will look like through the transforming grace of God. But before we get there, Wesley has two important counsels along the way, and they're represented in the Sermon on the Mount Discourse 4, as well as Sermon on the Mount Discourse 5. In the fourth one, he reminds us that Christianity is a social religion, and that to turn it into a solitary one is to destroy it. What Wesley has in mind here is that Christianity thrives in community. Indeed, we need each other in order to live out the Christian faith. There is no such thing as a solitary Christian. We cannot live the Christian faith alone. We need each other. We participate jointly together in the body of Christ. And then also in the Sermon on the Mount, Discourse 5, Wesley writes about the importance, once again, of the moral law, that grace, if it is to be understood properly, has to be seen in the context of the moral law, lest grace be misunderstood. And the most common way of misunderstanding grace is to see it as indulgence, that God indulges the sinner or sinners. But that is a grievous misunderstanding. And we avoid all that when we see grace in a normative context, in the context of the moral law, which is the express will of God. So for Wesley, and he is a conjunctive theologian, it's always law and grace, really never one without the other. The moral law is the context in which grace is understood, the moral law itself being the express will of God, a copy of the divine mind, the face of God unveiled as we are able to bear it, the form of God as we are able to bear it. This is all the language that Wesley uses to describe this normative context. And grace, of course, can be understood in a number of ways, both as the favor of God, but also as the power of God. And so we're slowly making our way through the Ordo Salutis towards heart purity. There'll be another important issue to face along the way, and that has to do not with actual sin, because that issue has really been dealt with in justification and the new birth. What we're going to be concerned with is not freedom from the guilt of sin, which is treated in justification, nor freedom from the power or dominion of sin, which is treated in the new birth. But we're looking forward to deliverance, that freedom from the carnal nature, that freedom from original sin, so that all the tempers and dispositions of our heart may be rightly oriented to God, that we, like those described in the Beatitudes, may worship God in spirit and in truth and in heart purity.